Hello everyone. Well, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure, even if it's a virtual meeting today, but to be able to share with you. And I was particularly pleased to accept the invitation. We've had wonderful colleagues from hematologists from Saudi Arabia joining the unit for a few months or a few years, and so it's always a pleasure to share with them. So I wanted here to, sorry, that's not the verb. That's the first slide here. Yeah. So we wanted to do today is just give an overview of what we've been doing, what we've been developing in thrombosis in terms of networks. And I know I've seen the program of the day and I know all of the research efforts that are going on. And so just to show how, well, hopefully show you the benefits of structuring a research network and what are the types of activities and types of benefits that you can get from that. So what is a network? Well, so multidisciplinary network of researchers, could be clinical research, could be translational science, and that's something we can come back to in the discussion as well. Multiple academic research sites. When we started ours, it was really at the beginning like only clinical research. And then as years went by, we added a bit of translational, a bit of basic science research. It's not easy to have basic science researchers, clinical researchers work together, but certainly at the end of the day, it proved that it was a useful choice to be able to make the connection between the two. So not only that, but I think something really important that we wanted to do is that building research capacity. So obviously by having the network, the researchers meet more often and have more chances to discuss projects and so on. But really, obviously like research becomes more and more technical, requires more and more professional skills. You need people who know how to do an ethics application, how to do grant funding, and the level of professionalism, the level of skills that's required becomes so high that sometimes if there is a young investigator at the site that wants to start doing research, sometimes it's just like too difficult for them if they don't have the expertise of people who have already done that. And also in academia, so some people are like clear leader and they want to write grants and get studies and develop trials and so on. And many other people as well are interested in participating, interested in helping, although they don't have the will to do new studies, right? So I think the idea was also how do we capitalize on people who are willing to contribute to enroll patients in studies, even if they are not the primary investigators of some studies. And behind that, obviously, is the challenge of trying to enroll at a sufficient pace in clinical studies and to be able to complete studies in a timely fashion, right? So when we started the network, again, we were mostly 4 clinical sites in Canada working together. And now we've had like 27 sites across the countries helping with studies. Again, not all of them are leaders, but all of them contribute to study enrollment. And it helps also coordinating efforts. So if we know that someone is applying for certain topics, then others avoid to go there or let them the leadership on that. Everybody helps on getting the best grant possible and getting the study done. And then maybe that's something that wasn't initially the main factor, but became something very important as we started, is to harmonize efforts. So we realized that everybody had different ways to get the case report form or to set up a database or to do adjudications of outcomes. So across the network, we started to develop some shared resources, so shared databases, shared case report forms, everybody asks always the same question in the study, right? We always collect the same type of data. So having a programming, for example, of an electronic CRF for a certain set of variables is something that then will benefit to all the other studies after that's done. So how to do that? It's hard. I guess it's a bit different between depending on which network, which country. Certainly, I can see that you need leaders, you need people who are willing to invest the time to do it and to connect with others and to discuss with them. I think you need trust, you need friendship as well, and something very important maybe is that complementarity, right? By having different sites who don't do the same thing or who don't have the same expertise in the same aspects will certainly help you as well getting a good balanced network. So we selected a non-for-profit model, right? And then really it was when we had the first grants to conduct the first studies that we were able to start the network. Admin support is something. So initially, when we started, again, when we were just a 4 sites, it was really hard to find a way to get that funded and to get that. So it was a bit like it was a will of each of us kind of thing. But then certainly when we started to have more sites joining us, then it was very important to get that admin support, people to organize the meetings, people to send the documentations and so on. So the Canadian Venous Thromboembolism Research Network started in 2015. Again, initially we were Ottawa, Montreal, London, Ontario, and Halifax. And as you know, for the ones who do thrombosis research, there was also a lot of research happening in McMaster in Hamilton. And so eventually in 2015, we answered to a call of proposal from our granting agency specifically about networks, what they call the community network. And the grant was about, okay, what do you want to do together over the next few years? So it was really a good step in trying to have everybody around the table and think about what people wanted to do, which project did they have, which specificities did they want to develop at their sites, and also if we were to work together, what were the key elements of research that we would like to help people with. So eventually, the leadership structures that we had has been to have 2 co-directors. So it was Dr. Khan, Dr. Roger to start with, and now I took over Dr. Roger as being the second co-director of the network. And we have a scientific steering committee who, maybe contrary to what the name says, isn't really about studies or I think that's something very important as well, is that maybe some investigators were worried that we would tell them what to do, but we never, the steering committee never decides on which study to perform or how we will perform a study. That's really something that the individual investigators remain in charge of. They can get help, they can get support or advice on how to do it. But again, the steering committee is much more about steering the network activities rather than driving the science itself. And then we also had an external advisory board that would just help us, giving advice on how to improve our operations and so on. And a small admin team, but even at the beginning we had 2, 3. Take some time. Take some people in between, communication and other structure. So we started with trying to share the activities of the network between platforms. So something that we wanted to do, which we felt was very important, was clinical trials on shared platform, but it was mostly about pilot trials. Just because obviously these days clinical trials are very big, need a lot of patients, but often it's hard to get funding to do a study of 2,000, 3,000 patients. So the idea there was to help people getting funds to test the feasibility of their clinical trial project. And so getting funds to, again, demonstrate feasibility processes and so on at their site. So every year we have a competition where we would fund 1 to 2 pilot RCT. And we've been very successful with that, with many of these RCTs becoming after that full-scale funded clinical trials. Shared platform, meaning what I was telling you about developing common CRF, so something that we've been working on, for example, is also to develop an adjudication platform. So it's kind of a web-based network of adjudicators for VTE outcomes. And so every time someone has a study that requires adjudication of VTE events, then it would use a platform. The platform will assign some adjudicators to the case, organize meetings in case of discrepancy, and so on, so that the process is smooth and that we don't have to share documents or send paperwork around. We chose to have also a translational basic science platform, which has been successful as well, supporting undergrad students in the labs or in doing more and basic research teams. Population and Health Service, which is about analysis of large healthcare databases. A training, mentoring, and early career, which is a very, very important part of what we do. So we also fund fellowships every year or research students or master students projects and so on, and trying to facilitate mobility across sites so that a student from Western Canada would come do their fellowship in Ottawa or vice versa and so on. Patient partners, and that's something that has become key, is that we have some patients that we train to become patient partners. And so now they participate in, and that's really something that initially was a bit like, oh, how do we do that? But we knew it was something that was encouraged, and it's really helping us a lot. So because the patients are patients who did have some issues with thrombosis, for example, so they know what went wrong, or they can help us understanding, what's really important to them, or which outcomes, or how would they feel about a study being presented a certain way, and so on. So they really became a critical part of our network, helping us at each of the steps. And then last but not least, a knowledge translation platform where this is about more like, how, so the Clot Plus, if some people know that, is a website where all the most important papers about thrombosis are reviewed by experts who would score them, and then the best or the most relevant one would be sent as a one-pager to the members of the network as being important articles. And so each of the platforms, that was more like voluntary basis, right? We said, okay, who wants to do what? Which physician wants to be involved in which one? Some people were already, so for example, Population Health Service, some people were already working with databases. So it was just a matter of, having them expanding that to the whole network and helping people who would have projects on such databases to have access to the database and so on. And I spoke a lot, well, we'll come back to the funding later, but so other stuff that we do, not in terms of platform, but in terms of programs is, so we have an annual conference, we have these funding competitions that I already mentioned. We do some monthly research seminars, more about, often what we try to do is to highlight one of the ongoing study and the topic related to that. We have the clinical investigation working group, which is all the PI of the studies who meet every month as well to discuss hurdles in the studies, or if there is a specific challenge with recruitment in one of the studies, how to address that, and so on. patient partners have their own meetings, and we organize training workshop, and then all what's promotion of the network, like on the social media and so on. We also, and that proved very efficient actually. Once the network started to be in operation and producing studies and so on, we became actually known, right, as something that was working well. And so now, often investigators, when they apply for funding, would request a letter of support from the network, and in which we describe all these functions that we have, right? So we say, okay, we support the study, we have that many sites that will be able to include that many patients, and we will provide patient partners to help with the study, and we will provide, they will have a chance to gather with other investigators to present challenges, and so that it gives some strong strength and some credibility to the funding agencies, and helps getting the study funded. So where do we stand? So we now have like more than 250 members across the country. I didn't speak a lot about money yet. I said we fund this, we fund that, but how did that work? So initially we did get a grant from the government, but then they were asking us to find matching funds from partners. So we had two main types of partners. One of them was institutions, and often they wouldn't give us cash, but they would give us in-kind contribution. So for example, a university or a research institute would say, I can give you 100 hours of statistician time during the year. Or they would say, well, if one of the fellows that you want to nominate is someone from our university, then we will take in charge his fellowship salary, for example. And the other big type of partner was the pharmaceutical industry. And initially we've been successful in raising funds in partnership with them. So it's what's in there for them. So we've tried as well sometimes to say, well, if you have a specific topic that you're interested in or a specific study that you would like done, then we could help with that as well. But it's also certainly a way for them to have access to physicians across the networks during our annual meetings, so they might have a booth to interact with physicians and with researchers, and often the researchers are the key opinion leaders, right, in a certain domain, so that helps them getting the public they want as well. So it has been working well. And so over the years, we supported more than 75 trainees, and really, we're very happy with the level of cooperation and engagement that we had through the group. We also added a clinical research coordinators group who have been also working on common tools for investigation, or to develop the best script to discuss a research study with patients, and so on and so on. So some maybe highlights. So I was telling you, we did get good stories with our pilot trial. So for example, one of the first pilot trials that we funded was the COBRA pilot. COBRA is a randomized trial comparing apixaban and rivaroxaban for treatment and DVT and PE. And so the pilot was done quickly through the network, and then with the help of that feasibility test, then we were able to get funding for the full-scale grant. The same for Trimline, which would be a study on prevention of catheter-associated DVT in cancer patients. When the pandemics hit, for example, having the network made it very easy for us to participate in the attack studies, or because everybody had the infrastructure in place already. We had research contracts between us. So we were able to set it up very quickly so that we could help with recruitment effort in these studies as well. And then we've had also some patient-led projects now. So for example, they did what's called a James Lind Alliance research prioritization exercise, where patients help you determining what are the most important unanswered questions in the field. So they came up with a list of, in their eyes, what are the most important, what are the most relevant questions that should be answered. And the same, it's then very helpful for us now when you apply for a grant and when you say you want money to do something, if you say, well, look at that's something that has been identified by patients as being very important to them. And definitely that has been helping us at convincing health authorities and funding agencies that's something that's worth to invest in. And so ASH and ISTH abstracts, that was to say something interesting that we do as well is that then every time we have one of these meetings, the whole network would say, okay, I'm presenting this, I'm presenting that. We try to have the logo on the poster, and we try so that everybody in the network knows that whichever doctor from whichever study will be, from whichever city will be presenting on what day, and then can go and support them. And so it really creates a collegial atmosphere around research in the country. And so just maybe a few words now on the next step, which was, okay, we have our network. Canada is a small country. It's a large country, but not so many not so many people or so many patients, like 35 million people. And obviously many of the studies that we do these days require much larger international collaborations, right? So we thanks to the fact that we did have our national network, we were also able to partner with others to then go to the international step. And that's what we called INVENT, the International Network of VTE Clinical Research Networks. And so what we did with INVENT was that we gathered, we had a similar network that was created in France, for example, and then we partnered with them and with the Netherlands as well, which was another strong country in VTE research, and then created that international network, which is another set of challenges, right? Because obviously it's very hard to get studies funded for multiple countries. Like most of the funding agencies would fund a study in their own country, but not for the rest of the countries. So you need to have a champion in each country applying for funds for the study in their own country, but accepting to work together on the same protocol. But sometimes a funding agency or a reviewer might say, oh, I want you to change this aspect, and it's hard, right? Because then you can't change that as every other countries if the other countries already got the fund. So it's another set of challenges, but certainly it has been working very well as well. We have a small funding competition where if someone from Italy wants to open the study in France or in China, then they can apply to the network, get a Kickstarter fund to start the research operation in the other countries. So we have 10 countries now, beyond the ones I cited. There's also Australia, Ireland, the UK, the US, and Spain, Italy, and doing more and more studies where it's the same after the study presented to the network to say, okay, are other countries willing to do it? And often, if someone is okay, I will work with you on that, and we get the money to do it, and it has really been helping tremendously increasing the recruitment. It takes a lot of trust, takes a lot of maybe harmonization again. So there as well, we have had a lot of efforts at trying to get common ways of doing things so that it becomes easier to open a study in another country, but it certainly has been doable and fruitful. So I think I would stop there and happy to take any questions or have the discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Rika, for